Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Daily Cannon Tactics Board. I'm Stephen Bradley, and first off, just want to say thank you to everyone who tuned into last week's episode. We were starting off by thinking maybe we'll get 300, 400 views, a couple of likes, just try and, build up a little bit of an audience and go over there, see where it takes us, see if this is going to become a long-running thing. And yeah, I mean, last week it was 500 views and a couple of likes, and we were like, okay, this might catch on. This might be good. Maybe people want to watch this. This week it's 800 views and 15 likes. We're like, what? Like, the insane amount of support that you're showing for this new content so far is unbelievable. And thank you again. It gives me encouragement to do more and bring you more analysis and tactical talk and just go into a little bit more depth than most other podcasts can and sometimes do. So thank you, especially thank you to our good friend Jimmy James here, who clearly liked what he saw, especially the furnishings. As you can see, eagle-eyed listeners and viewers will see that in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, I've tilted the camera slightly just to avoid the sight of my unmade bed. Look, you can let me off a small bit here. I don't know about the last bit here, but single man lockdown. It's been March. It's my XG is the same as Williams over the last 4 months, if you know what I mean. And it's one of those situations where I need to get myself back in shape. But speaking of situations where nobody looks like they're going to be scoring in the next 1,000 years, the Arsenal. Good God, was this an awful game to watch. I mean, the Newcastle game the previous week, the Premier game on BBC One, the FA Cup, where it was 0-0 until the 107th minute, was a bad watch at times. This was worse. There's no sugarcoating it at all. This was a poor game where Arsenal were, I won't say fortunate to get a draw, but certainly didn't deserve to get the win. They did not do enough offensively, at least, to warrant even 2 goals, let alone 1, to win a game. And this was one of those games where you get a certain sense of who needs to be playing more often, who doesn't need to be playing more often, what tactical shape Arsenal need to be deploying more often, and what tactical shape they need to be deploying less often, and what fits this squad and who fits in certain roles. And the key lesson to learn from this game as a whole is that if Arsenal are playing 4 at the back for the foreseeable future, Kieran Tierney has to be playing left back. It's a given. He was brilliant in the last couple of weeks, but now it's confirmed. With Kolasinac gone to Schalke, if Saka is going to be deployed up front like he should be on a long-term basis, Arsenal do not have left back covered for him. And this game was confirmation that Maitland-Niles in a 5-back formation can play it with certain tweaks, but as a left back, with Arsenal needing the width that they need to make sure that certain players play in certain roles properly, it's just not a fit. And this game was a perfect example of just why. Because Palace didn't do anything particularly complicated. It was 2 banks of 4, and then Benteke and Zaha just sat in front of those 2 lines of 4 and just chased the ball. It was full on Mike Bassett, Football Manager 4-4 bleeping 2. It was, break through us, we'll keep nice and narrow. It's up to you to try and force your way either around us or through us. And what we've seen from Arsenal over the last couple of weeks is that they're able to get around teams. So if this is Tierney would bomb on here, Aubameyang would go there. Ward, the right back, would have to make a choice. Either he commits to Aubameyang or he commits to Maitland-Niles. And most times the defender will commit to Aubameyang to getting an extra body into the box, and then the cross goes in. And then you try and defend the cross, and you rinse and repeat and hope you keep a draw and at least a clean sheet. This happened 2 minutes into the game. This exact situation. Xhaka found Maitland-Niles down the left wing, the overlap was on, and he got in behind. And you're like, right, is he a threat with his left foot? And the cross went straight into row F, and as a result, the Crystal Palace backline went, nope, he's not a threat. He's not a threat with his left foot. We can stay nice and narrow. And for the remainder of the game, that's exactly what happened. Maitland-Niles at left back was not an offensive threat for Arsenal. And as a result, the whole system that Arsenal have been building over the last 3 or 4 weeks completely short circuited because now there's no out ball. So when Arsenal were building up, ball would go Leno to Luis. Luis is now playing left centre back instead of right centre back because Gabriel is still coming back from COVID. Pablo Mari has a little bit of a calf injury, so he's out. So Luis having to play left centre back again, not his ideal position because when he's on the right with his, in essence, 7 iron of a right foot, he can play those long diagonal balls from here. He can open up his body and play him down the right. He can't do that from the left because the way he crosses the ball, or I should say, like drives the ball forward, he needs that space to go over from the right to left. It doesn't work from left to left because he puts a bit of curve on it, which means he has to go like that, go this way. And he just doesn't have the room. His margin of error is this. Whereas, suppose if he's coming from a far wider angle, he's got a far bigger diagonal to aim at. So that compromised this side of the pitch as well because his long passing was not as efficient as it usually is. And Maitland-Niles, after 5 minutes, almost gave up trying to go on the overlap, at least past the back line, because he wasn't confident in his ability to cross the ball in on his left foot. And what it did was, Palace just did this. Palace just closed the ranks. Townsend, left-footed winger on the right, easy, right-footed attacking midfielder on the left. They just made it nice and narrow for Arsenal. Nice and narrow. Milivojevic sat in, MacArthur sat in, and they just waited. They just said, look, we don't fear that, and we don't fear that. And the reason why we don't fear Bellerin on the right wing is because we are so confident in Maitland-Niles' inability to cross the ball in on his left, we're all going to do this. We're just going to go 5 yards in. We're just going to do that. We're going to make sure that there's no space down the right wing, and Arsenal are just going to have to pass around themselves and create something through the middle where we have all our bodies. And as a result, the game just ground into a stalemate. No out ball on the left. Everyone camped around the right. And it just meant that Arsenal just were almost in a position where they were so afraid of giving away the ball because they knew they weren't going to get many chances to break through the back line. They kept recycling the ball basically just in order to recycle the ball. And here's Arsenal's heat map. You look at that initially, and you go, okay, well, they've got a number of, red marks around the area, which they had a lot of the ball around here. Previous heat maps, this, where my white arrow is, would be where this dip is. Like, there would be no movement at all from the centre. So they knocked the ball a lot around the central areas, at least a lot more than usual. But that was because Palace were very much like this. They were like, go on, have the ball. We don't care. We're set up like this. You can have the ball in around your halfway line all you want. If they want to push up, Bellerin wants to push up, fine. We've got 8 back. You're not getting through us. You're going to have to go around us. And as a result, Arsenal were camped here. And the extent to which Maitland-Niles' inability to get the ball down the left meant 2 things for Arsenal's ball progression. One, let me clear this. Here's Maitland-Niles' heat map of where he had the ball until he was replaced by Bukayo Saka at left back. He has it there, which is okay, and a little bit inside here. But as you can see, he had very little ball past basically 30 yards in towards goal. It was all in and around the halfway line. He was an out ball for ball recycling instead of an actual threat. But because he wasn't providing any sort of attacking impetus to the game at all, he saw very little of the ball because Arsenal knew giving him the ball wouldn't do anything. Let me contrast with Hector Bellerin. Can you see the difference? Look how much of the ball Bellerin had. Just because Arsenal were so aware of the fact that they were going to get nothing down the left, they just forced everything down the right. Bellerin, Ceballos, in and around this area as well, but he had to do a lot of work because Xhaka was basically playing left midfield and left back half the time, and I'll show you why in a second. But Saka there, and then a bit of left back as well when he moved down in the second half. But again, he's wide right. Well, Smith Rowe, he's wide right. I'll turn off Maitland-Niles for you. He's wide right. Like, so much of the ball ended up in and around this area of the field that Arsenal at times ended up like this. Saka here, Smith Rowe here, Bellerin there, Ceballos here. Lacazette moved over, Aubameyang moved over. Maitland-Niles would be sitting out there for the ball, waiting for the ball to move. And no one would give it to him because they knew he couldn't do this and get the ball in. So Palace were very happily just basically playing on one side of the pitch. They were like, we're just going to cut you off. And as a result, Arsenal found themselves with the ball with Bellerin here numerous times. And Smith Rowe would get out of the way, try and make a bit of space for him. Saka would do the same. And because Arsenal were so used to recycling the ball and making sure they didn't lose it, they never played with enough impetus, especially as both halves wore on. At the start of both halves, they were okay. They were getting the ball forward quickly. But as the half wore on, Danny Ceballos would get into this exact position time after time after time. He'd be, McArthur would try and cut off there. Milivojevic, I always get that name wrong, would mark Smith Rowe. Townsend would try to cover Xhaka. Maitland-Niles would be there. Bellerin had the ball to Ceballos 7, 8, 9 times. But instead of giving the ball to Ceballos and progressing it on, he would give it back to Holding. And then Holding would give it back to Luiz would give it back to Xhaka, and the move would start again. And this would happen time after time after time after time. And as a result, Arsenal weren't attacking with any great tempo, any great urgency. And Palace were able to just sit in front of them and go, this is easy, lads. We're just gonna rotate every time they move the ball. And every time it would go back to Maitland-Niles, they'd just move back, keep their lines, keep their organisation, and just wait for Arsenal to give up the ball. And it's a shame that it showed Maitland-Niles' inadequacies on the ball so acutely, but it did. Like when he was playing so well at left wing back, in the cup run especially, we had 3 centre-backs, 2 midfielders. We'll get Smith Rowe there and Ceballos there. Ooh. And Ceballos there. Aubameyang left wing, Lacazette there, and Saka there. When Maitland-Niles was doing so well at left wing back, this wasn't Xhaka, this was Tierney. And even in this system, when Arsenal were playing 3-4-3, it would frequently be Tierney who would end up here. And Maitland-Niles would sit back and play the defensive midfielder role. Aubameyang would then play centre mid, Smith Rowe would cover over. Saka, who was playing left wing at the time, when Lacazette was out and Aubameyang was there, oftentimes Saka would come in and would play left back. And then Maitland-Niles would come inside. Like, Arsenal were finding ways to both play 5 at the back and make sure that Tierney, masquerading as Xhaka here, got here and was able to find his attacking input into the box. When Tierney's not there, this does not work. And it's just got to the stage now where Arsenal need to find a plan B for when Tierney's not in the team, because maybe that Saka, he was okay doing it in the second half, but Maitland-Niles' left back in a 4 doesn't work, because whilst during the first half, especially as it wore on, they were trying to make an effort to get Maitland-Niles out right up the pitch, Xhaka was ending up here getting the ball. Well, I'll show you Xhaka's there. Xhaka was playing left back at times when Arsenal had the ball. Smith Rowe was dropping back, and Arsenal were back in this 3-4-3 kind of. But again, this isn't Tierney, it's Maitland-Niles. And Maitland-Niles, because he can, Andros Townsend trying his best to play left back, Maitland-Niles would never, just hasn't got it in his skill set to do that. So as a result, Xhaka was now taken out of position. Smith Rowe was being taken out of position. Ceballos was basically doing two midfielders' work, which is not, again, his skill set. And the thing just ground to a halt. And the best way I can show you how badly it ground to a halt is this: touches per game. Granit Xhaka, because he was playing left back sometimes and centre mid sometimes and basically getting the ball for Maitland-Niles, had 130 touches of the ball, which is madness. Bellerin with 107, Rob Holding with 106. As you go on, the people that you want to have the ball, Saka had 70, but a lot of that was at left back. Smith Rowe with 60. Maitland-Niles with 57. Here's where it gets troublesome. Aubameyang with 53. Leno with 33. And this is the issue. Leno, the goalkeeper, had 13 more touches of the ball than Arsenal's centre forward. That's how badly this formation completely, it just malfunctioned is the best word for I can find for it, because they just were not able to get the ball into their number 9. Despite it having several good players on the ball, no matter what they did, Arsenal were not able to get the ball in here at all. At all. And if Maitland-Niles is going to be playing left back again, it means that this player here cannot be Aubameyang. Because there's so much creative focus now on the team goes to this left wing spot. Because if the left back doesn't get forward and the left winger doesn't get forward, if all the left back does is basically stay there, and all the left wing, who is in essence another striker, plays there, then what's our man doing? What's the right back doing? Nothing. So he's like, oh, okay, great. I'm just gonna mark him basically, and it just cramps everything in the middle for everyone else. It just means that there's no space, there's no freedom of movement for any of the front four. And when Arsenal came out at the start of both halves, when they were running at the teams, they did create a couple of chances because they were willing to run past. But as time went on, as the half wore on, less and less runs were made, fewer and fewer passes into the front three were made, and when Arsenal did make a change, when Saka was put at left back, it did mean that they'd had a threat. But all of a sudden, Townsend was like, well, I don't need to work. I know that Saka's going to be a threat, but I know Saka's not a good enough left back, so I'm going to stay on his shoulder, and I'm going to make sure that he can't run past me, because if Arsenal lose the ball, which they were doing a lot, I'm going to run past him. And Easy did the same with Bellerin after about half an hour, and there was numerous opportunities where Palace were basically counter-attacking with 4, and Arsenal were defending with 3. Because Saka was caught up the field and Bellerin was caught up the field. And Xhaka, to his credit, maybe had his best defensive game for the club. But most of the time Arsenal were giving away the ball because either Ceballos was misplacing it, or Xhaka was misplacing it, or players just weren't in positions to receive the ball at times. And Palace were able to execute their game plan a lot easier and a lot more efficiently than Arsenal were. And it's getting to the stage where Arsenal have a plan A. They have a very, very good plan A when it's Tierney on the left wing, and when they can find, basically the time to play Thomas Partey again. You would assume for Ceballos, but if Xhaka is going to be playing a lot more often, then Partey's going to be doing a lot more for his running instead of being on the ball a lot more, which is not really why you bought him. You didn't buy Partey to be the box-to-box midfielder, the centre mid. You bought him to be a little bit more of a playmaker. He's capable of it, but you want a far more defensively capable player to play beside Partey, so that Partey is the complementary defensive midfielder, not the primary one. Partey's okay as a defensive midfielder. He's much better when he's allowed freedom to go forward. You can't do that with Xhaka behind him, because Xhaka does not have the athleticism to cover the space needed when Arsenal play 4 at the back. So, again, this game showed that, yes, when Tierney's playing, and when Arsenal get the ball forward, when Gabriel is playing and Luis is there instead on the left, it works. The engine powers along. But when it doesn't, when there's, when the cogs are a little bit unaligned and when there's a little bit of sugar in the petrol, the engine grinds to a halt a lot quicker than any of us would like to see. Anyway, that's it for this week's tactical briefing. If you have enjoyed the video, please leave a like, leave a comment, leave a subscription, and yeah, we'll talk to you next time. Good luck.